All right, we'll have a look at the IGCSE ratio and proportion question 6. This is for year 11 and for year 10 accelerate classes. It says an aircraft is cruising at 720 kilometers per hour and covers 1,000 kilometers. How far would it travel in the same period of time if the speed was increased to 800 kilometers per hour? Well, let's deal with the first bit first, the 700 and the 1,000. So if we know an aircraft is cruising at a certain speed and covers a certain distance, we do know that velocity is equal to distance over time. And we know that therefore time, if I was to multiply this by time, and I was to multiply this by time, that time would be equal to velocity times distance. So time times velocity equals distance. Or I could just say divide both by velocity and say time is equal to distance on velocity. So we can find the time by dividing the distance by the velocity. And this makes sense because the question, of course, asks a certain distance, certain velocity. And if you think about it, if you were to travel, say, a distance of 1,000 kilometers, and you were to travel it at 1,000 kilometers per hour, it would mean you travel the whole thing in 1 hour. Yeah? You do 1,000 kilometers at 1,000 kilometers an hour would take you 1 hour. What about if you were traveling 1,000 kilometers and you were traveling at 500 kilometers per hour? Well, 1,000 divided by 500 is 2. It would take you 2 hours to travel that distance. So we know if we take the distance and we divide it by the velocity or the speed, that's the amount of time it's going to take us to travel there. Now we know that we're traveling 1,000 kilometers, so time is equal to distance, which is 1,000 kilometers, and we're dividing it by the velocity, and the velocity in this case is 720 kilometers per hour. So if we divide the distance by the velocity, we know the time it takes. So let's have a look at doing that. So I'll do that on the calculator actually, because that one's a bit of a gnarly one. Let's say we've got 1,000, and we're going to divide it by 720. Yeah, so it's 1.38 recurring, 1.38 recurring hours. So 1 hour and so long. I won't worry too much about the hours and minutes and seconds here. We could work it out. We won't worry about it because we've got another problem. Now that we know the time, we've got to answer the question. And the question says, knowing the time, how far would it travel if the speed was increased to 800? So we're going to keep the same time period. We're going to change the speed, and we're going to ask, well, what is the distance? So here it goes. So this time, we know time is equal to distance on velocity or speed. This time, we do not know the distance. So I'm going to keep the speed time the same. I'm going to go 1.38 recurring is equal to the distance we don't know. On the velocity, we do know the velocity is 800. So now all we have to do is make distance the subject. So I've got my 1.38 recurring, and I'm going to multiply everything by 800. And 800 divided by 800 gives me the distance. So the distance would equal 1.38 recurring times 800. There it is, 1.38 recurring times 800. And I would get 1,111.1111 and so on. So distance is 1,100 now 0.11, and that's to 2 decimal places. That's kilometers, and I'll put brackets 2dp. Quite often, though, they like the answer in, say, 3 decimal places, or 3 significant figures is most likely. For any of the Cambridge stuff, and this is a Cambridge question, it's almost always 3 significant figures. So I'm going to say distance is equal to 1110 kilometers 3SF, 3 significant figures. And that's how I would express the answer.